On the surface, the Whitmore marriage looked untouchable. Glass penthouse overlooking the Chicago skyline, charity photos in glossy magazines, a husband praised for his brilliance, and a wife admired for her poise. But perfection has a way of cracking under chandelier light. That night, beneath crystal and gold, a single glance lingered too long between a husband and a woman who was not his wife, and someone else noticed. Some secrets don't explode. They unfold quietly, like silk slipping from a shoulder. If stories about love, betrayal, and the cost of dignity pull at something inside you, stay a little longer. There are more doors in this glittering ballroom that haven't been opened yet. From the 32nd floor of their River North penthouse, the city looked obedient. Charlotte Whitmore stood barefoot near the glass wall, a wine glass resting between her fingers, watching Lake Michigan swallow the last of the evening light. Chicago's skyline flickered to life, blue-white office towers, the red blink of distant aircraft, the steady pulse of traffic along Lakeshore Drive. Behind her, Nathan's voice carried from the kitchen. "I might be late tonight," he said, not loudly, not apologetically, just matter of fact. Charlotte didn't turn around immediately. She had learned that timing mattered. Silence revealed more than questions ever did. "How late?" she asked finally. "Client dinner. New acquisition deal. It's complicated." Everything in Nathan's world had become complicated lately. He stepped into view, adjusting the cuff of his tailored charcoal suit. His tie was a shade darker than usual. His hair, once slightly careless, had been styled with deliberate precision. Charlotte noticed these things the way she noticed tension in a painting, small choices that altered the whole composition. "Will you be home before midnight?" she asked. Probably. Probably." He crossed the room and kissed her cheek. The gesture was correct, practiced, warm enough to appear sincere. But he smelled different. Not unfamiliar, just not his usual cedar and vetiver cologne. This scent was sharper, cleaner, almost new. Charlotte did not comment. As the door closed behind him, the apartment settled into stillness. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant elevator chime. Somewhere below, a siren wailed briefly and faded. She walked to the marble kitchen island where Nathan had left his phone charging earlier. It was gone now. He used to forget it. That, more than anything, unsettled her. Underscore. At his downtown office on Wacker Drive, Nathan Whitmore was still every inch the accomplished attorney. Corner office. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Degrees framed with discreet confidence. He thrived in negotiation rooms. Cool, articulate, persuasive. But tonight, he wasn't heading to a boardroom. He entered a private dining room at a Michelin-starred restaurant in the West Loop. Avery Collins was already seated. She wore a deep emerald dress, elegant but not overt. Her dark hair fell in soft waves over one shoulder. Her laptop was open beside her wine glass, as if to legitimize the meeting. "Nathan," she said, standing. "Avery." Their handshake lasted a fraction too long. Avery's startup, Luminagrid, had recently secured a major round of funding. Nathan's firm represented her in the acquisition of a smaller competitor. They had met 6 months ago. At first, she had been simply another ambitious client. Then she began asking about his career, about his marriage, about how he balanced having it all. He told himself he enjoyed mentoring her. That was the word he used. Mentoring. But mentorship did not require text messages at 11:47 p.m. It did not require deleting message threads. Did Charlotte like the gallery in New York? Avery asked casually, swirling her wine. Nathan hesitated half a second. "She hasn't gone yet. Next week." "Oh." Avery's eyes flickered, subtle calculation. "You'll be alone at the gala then." The gala. Chicago's annual innovation and arts benefit. Luminagrid was one of the main sponsors this year. Nathan's firm, a strategic partner. Charlotte had mentioned her travel plans weeks ago. An exhibition opening in Manhattan. Important. Prestigious. He had not tried to stop her. He hadn't asked many questions either. "That's right," Nathan said. Avery leaned back in her chair, studying him. You deserve a night off from being perfect. The sentence hovered between them. Nathan smiled, but something in his chest tightened. Back at the penthouse, Charlotte opened her laptop at the dining table. Not to check email, not to browse exhibition layouts. She opened a shared digital calendar. Nathan had added a recurring event labeled Client Review, LC. LC, Lumina Collins. He hadn't bothered to change the initials. Charlotte stared at the screen for a long time. She remembered the first years of their marriage in a smaller condo in Lincoln Park. How Nathan used to call her between court hearings just to hear her voice. How he would send her photos of courthouse architecture because he knew she loved structure and form. Somewhere along the way, admiration had been replaced by assumption. He assumed she wouldn't notice. He assumed she would remain composed. He assumed silence meant ignorance. Charlotte closed the laptop gently. In the reflection of the darkened screen, she studied her own face. No tears. No hysteria. Only something colder, clarity. She walked into their bedroom and opened Nathan's closet. The suits were arranged by color. Shoes polished. Everything in order. She ran her fingers along the fabric of his newest jacket. There it was again, the unfamiliar scent. She pressed her palm against the cloth, as if testing whether it would confess. It did not. Near midnight, Nathan returned home. Charlotte was still awake, seated on the living room sofa with a book open in her lap. She had not turned a page. How was dinner? She asked evenly. Productive. He loosened his tie. You should get some rest. Early day tomorrow, right? Yes, she said. Very early. He didn't ask for details. Nathan disappeared into the bathroom. The shower turned on. Charlotte's gaze shifted to his briefcase by the door. For a moment, just a moment, she considered opening it. Instead, she stood and walked back to the window. The city no longer looked obedient. It looked indifferent. Steam rose from street grates. Taxis moved like insects. In thousands of apartments, lights flicked off one by one. She rested her forehead lightly against the cool glass. If there was another woman, Charlotte thought, it wasn't just about desire. It was about being unseen. And that, more than betrayal, was what frightened her. Behind her, the shower stopped running. Charlotte straightened her posture. She would not confront him tonight. Not yet. Because she needed certainty. And Charlotte Whitmore had always believed in examining every detail before revealing a masterpiece. The first time Nathan noticed Avery Collins, it wasn't because she was beautiful. It was because she wasn't intimidated. Most founders who walked into Whitmore and Grant carried either desperation or arrogance. Avery carried neither. She entered the glass-walled conference room with a tablet tucked under her arm and a calm that felt practiced but not artificial. Outside, the Chicago River moved in slow, gray ribbons beneath the morning haze. Mr. Whitmore, she said, offering her hand. Nathan, he corrected smoothly. Her handshake was firm. Direct eye contact. No fluttering nerves. Lumina Grid had just secured $40 million in Series B funding. Her company specialized in urban energy optimization, algorithms that reduced electricity waste in commercial buildings. Smart, profitable, attractive to investors. Complicated enough to require airtight legal architecture. Nathan liked complicated. He liked being necessary. Over the next hour, Avery spoke with clarity and restraint. She understood risk. She anticipated litigation scenarios before he mentioned them. When she disagreed, she did so thoughtfully. You're assuming the acquisition won't trigger regulatory scrutiny, she said, leaning slightly forward. But if we scale too fast, we'll look predatory. Nathan smiled faintly. That's why you hired me. A flicker passed between them. Respect, edged with challenge. After the meeting ended, most clients would have left. Avery lingered. There's a place across the street with decent espresso, she said. If you have 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Nathan glanced at his watch. He had 3 emails flagged urgent. A conference call in 45 minutes. I can spare 10, he said. The cafe smelled of roasted beans and fresh bread. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the river walk where joggers moved past in steady rhythm. They sat across from each other, laptops closed now, conversation untethered from contracts. You've been at Whitmore and Grant your whole career? She asked. Since law school. And you never thought about starting something on your own? The question lingered longer than it should have. Nathan had thought about it years ago, before partnership, before mortgage payments and carefully curated stability. Security has its advantages, he replied. Avery tilted her head. Security can also be a cage. He almost laughed at that. Almost. Underscore. The lunches began to happen more frequently. At first, always framed by business. Draft reviews. Strategy updates. Investor concerns. Avery preferred discussing details in person rather than over Zoom. Nathan told himself that face-to-face interaction accelerated trust. It also accelerated something else. He noticed the way she listened, fully, without distraction. Charlotte used to listen like that in the early years. Back when his ambitions were still dreams and not expectations. One afternoon, as October wind rattled against the office windows, Avery stood by his desk reviewing a document. You don't seem like someone who settles, she said quietly. Nathan looked up. Settles? For routine. For predictability. He leaned back in his chair. Marriage isn't routine. No, she agreed. But sometimes people are. The implication was subtle, but deliberate. He should have shut it down. Instead, he said nothing. Underscore. At home. Charlotte noticed that Nathan had begun showering immediately upon returning from work. It was a small change, almost practical. Chicago winters clung to clothing, wind, exhaust, the scent of the city. Still, she watched him from the bedroom doorway one evening as he loosened his tie and disappeared into the bathroom. How's the new client? She asked casually. Promising, he replied from behind the closed door. Ambitious. Male or female? The water turned on before he answered. Female. CEO type. Charlotte absorbed the pause more than the information. Later that night, as Nathan slept beside her, his breathing steady and oblivious, Charlotte stared at the faint glow of the city through the curtains. Her mind worked quietly, assembling fragments. New cologne, new energy, new distance. She did not accuse. Not yet. Underscore. Back downtown. The boundary shifted on an unremarkable Thursday. They had finished reviewing acquisition terms in Nathan's office. Evening had fallen unnoticed. The rest of the floor was nearly empty. Most associates had gone home. Avery stood near the window, Chicago lights reflected in the glass. You ever feel, she said, not turning around, like you built the life you were supposed to want? Nathan felt something tighten beneath his ribs. I have a good life, he answered carefully. That's not what I asked. She faced him then. The space between them felt charged, not overtly, not dramatically, just aware. You admire her? Avery asked. My wife. Nathan's tone sharpened. Yes. Yes, he said after a beat. But you don't look happy when you talk about her. The comment struck closer than he expected. That's inappropriate, he said, though his voice lacked force. Avery stepped closer, not touching, just near enough for him to feel the warmth of her presence. I'm not trying to ruin anything, she said softly. I just think people deserve to feel seen. Seen. The word landed heavily. For a fleeting second, Nathan imagined stepping back, drawing a clean line, ending the lunches, reassigning the account. Instead, he reached for the folder on his desk, creating movement where stillness had grown dangerous. We should finalize the indemnity clause, he said. Avery watched him, understanding the retreat, but not discouraged by it. Because she had seen it too. The hesitation. The curiosity. The door that hadn't closed. That night, Nathan deleted 3 messages before going to bed. Dinner next week? No laptops. You look distracted today. Don't overthink it. He told himself it wasn't an affair. Nothing physical had happened. Not yet. But something had shifted, something intangible and far more complicated. In the dark beside him, Charlotte shifted in her sleep, turning her back toward him. Nathan stared at the ceiling. Security can also be a cage. The phrase replayed in his mind long after the city had gone quiet. Chicago in November carried a particular kind of gray, low clouds pressing against the skyline, wind tunneling through steel corridors between buildings. From the museum terrace, Charlotte watched the river turn the color of brushed metal. Inside, assistants moved carefully around a new installation shipment. Wooden crates, bubble wrap, the faint scent of dust and varnish. Art required patience. You never rushed the unveiling. Charlotte had built her career on that principle. Her phone buzzed once in her coat pocket. Nathan, running late. Don't wait up. She stared at the message longer than necessary. It was polite, efficient, empty. 3 months ago, he would have added something else. A heart emoji. A joke about her overworking. A question about dinner. Now it was logistics. She slipped the phone back into her pocket and turned toward the gallery floor. Lower the lighting by 10%, she told her assistant. The shadows are too harsh. Harsh light exposed everything. Nathan hadn't intended to stay that late. The investor strategy session ended at 6. The rest of the legal team dispersed quickly, eager to escape the cold. Avery remained in the conference room, reviewing her phone. You look exhausted, she said when the door clicked shut behind the last associate. Occupational hazard. You ever take time off? He smirked. I bill by the hour. That wasn't my question. She walked to the window. Snow had begun to fall, thin, hesitant flakes dissolving against the glass. There's a rooftop bar 2 blocks from here, Avery said lightly. They installed heated domes for winter. It's quiet on weekdays. Nathan hesitated. This was the moment. He could say no. He could mention Charlotte. He could suggest rescheduling for business only. Instead, he heard himself say, 1 drink. The rooftop was strung with warm lights that blurred against the snowfall. Transparent domes lined the terrace, enclosing small tables like private worlds. Inside one of them, the city looked distant, muted. They sat close, not touching, but aware of the shared warmth. Avery ordered bourbon. Nathan followed. Does she ever question you? Avery asked. Charlotte. Yes. No, he said too quickly. She trusts me. Avery studied him over the rim of her glass. And do you deserve that? The question lodged somewhere uncomfortable. It's not what you think, he replied. I didn't say it was anything. Silence stretched between them. Outside the dome, wind pressed against plastic walls, faint but persistent. Nathan felt the strange exhilaration of proximity. Not physical, not yet, but emotional. Being seen without context, without history, without the weight of 15 years. You make it sound like I'm trapped, he said. Are you? He thought of the penthouse, the curated dinner parties, the museum galas, the life that looked flawless from a distance. He thought of Charlotte's steady gaze. I'm stable, he corrected. Avery smiled faintly. That's not the same thing. When Nathan returned home, it was nearly midnight. Charlotte was seated at the dining table, laptop open, glasses perched low on her nose. A single lamp cast soft light across her face. You're up, he said, surprised. Budget revisions, she replied calmly. How was the meeting? Long. He removed his coat. Careful, measured. She closed her laptop slowly. Nathan. Something in her tone made him pause. Yes. You've been distant. The words were not accusatory. They were observational. I've been busy, he said. You're always busy. That's unfair. She stood, walking toward the kitchen sink, rinsing an already clean glass. Is it? He felt irritation spark, not because she was wrong, but because she was close. It's a demanding quarter, he said. You know that. She turned off the faucet and faced him. I do. I just don't remember when demanding became absent. The air between them shifted, thicker, heavier. Nathan opened his mouth, then closed it. He could confess the emotional confusion. The lunches. The rooftop drink. Instead, he said, You're overthinking this. There it was. The first undeniable lie, not about facts, but about feeling. Charlotte held his gaze for a long moment. Searching. Measuring. I hope so, she said quietly. Underscore. Later, in bed, Nathan lay awake while Charlotte's breathing evened beside him. He unlocked his phone. Avery, tonight was nice. Avery, you don't look stable, by the way. You look lonely. His thumb hovered over the screen. Lonely. Was he? Charlotte's back faced him again, a narrow strip of lamplight outlining her shoulder. He typed slowly. It was just a drink. He erased it. We should keep this professional. He erased that too. Finally, he sent. You're reading too much into things. The response came almost instantly. Am I? He locked the phone and placed it face down on the nightstand. Beside him, Charlotte stirred slightly, as if sensing movement in the dark. In the quiet of the room, Nathan felt the weight of something intangible but irreversible. Nothing had happened. No lines had been physically crossed. But the emotional geography of his marriage had shifted. A space had opened, small, barely visible, but real. And once a space exists, something always tries to fill it. Outside, snow continued to fall over Chicago, blanketing rooftops and sidewalks, softening edges. Inside the penthouse, the distance between two people sharing the same bed felt sharper than the winter wind pressing against the glass. The shift did not happen in a dramatic burst. It happened on a Tuesday. Chicago's sky was colorless, the kind of afternoon that flattened everything into muted gray. Nathan had canceled a junior associate meeting to review final acquisition clauses with Avery in person. It was easier, he told himself. Faster. Her office this time. Lumina Grid's headquarters occupied the top floor of a renovated industrial building in Fulton Market, exposed brick, steel beams, long glass tables that reflected overhead lights. Youthful ambition lived in the walls. By 7:30, most of her team had left. Only the low hum of servers and the distant clatter of the freight elevator echoed through the space. You didn't have to come here, Nathan said, loosening his tie. We could have handled this tomorrow. You were already downtown, Avery replied. And you said you didn't want email trails. The comment lingered. He had said that, half joking, half not. They reviewed the last page of the contract side by side, shoulders almost touching. The scent of her perfume, subtle, clean, mingled with the faint metallic air of the building. You ever get tired of being careful? She asked softly. Nathan didn't look up. Careful is what keeps people safe. Safe from what? Consequences. She closed the folder. And what if the consequence is realizing you've been asleep? He finally met her gaze. There was no business left in the room. Just space. And awareness. Nathan, she said, not seductively, not pleading, simply stating his name as if testing its weight. He should have left. He knew it in a clear, rational corner of his mind. He could still step away. Walk out. Drive home. Apologize to Charlotte for being late. Instead, he reached out, just to brush a stray strand of hair from Avery's cheek. It was an unnecessary gesture. It was the line. The kiss was not hurried, not desperate. It unfolded slowly, almost cautiously, as if both of them were verifying that it was real. For a brief, suspended second, the world outside the office ceased to exist. No museum exhibitions. No penthouse windows. No shared calendars. Only warmth and proximity and the intoxicating relief of being wanted without history. When they pulled apart, silence filled the room. Nathan felt it immediately, the aftershock. Not regret yet, but gravity. We shouldn't, he said, though he did not step back. Avery's eyes searched his face. Then don't. The invitation was simple. So was the choice. He kissed her again. Later, as he drove north along Lakeshore Drive, the city lights streaked across his windshield in blurred gold lines. His phone rested in the cup holder, dark and still. He felt exhilarated, alive in a way that unsettled him. He told himself it was contained, discreet. No one would know. It didn't diminish what he had with Charlotte. It was separate, compartmentalized. He repeated the word like a legal defense. Charlotte was in the bedroom when he arrived home. She had changed into a soft gray sweater, her hair loosely tied back. An open exhibition catalog lay on her lap, though she hadn't turned a page in several minutes. "You're late," she said quietly. Final revisions ran long. She studied him. There was something different in his posture, not guilt exactly, more like alertness, as if he were carrying electricity beneath his skin. "Did you eat?" she asked. "Yes." "With the team?" "With the client." The lie came smoother now. Charlotte nodded once. "Good. You've been skipping meals." Her tone held no accusation, only concern. The simplicity of it struck him unexpectedly. He walked into the bathroom without another word. Under the shower's heat, he closed his eyes. Avery's touch replayed in fragments. Her hand at his collar, the warmth of her breath. He pressed his palms against the tile. "This is temporary," he told himself. "It doesn't change anything." But somewhere deeper, beneath the justifications, he understood a boundary had dissolved. The following afternoon, Avery sent a message. Last night wasn't a mistake. He stared at it during a board meeting, barely hearing the CFO discuss quarterly projections. His response took longer this time. "We need to be careful." Her reply came minutes later. Careful doesn't mean invisible. There it was. Expectation. The dynamic had shifted. This was no longer flirtation suspended in possibility. It was real. It required navigation. It required lies. That evening, Charlotte stood alone in the museum's main hall after closing hours. The new installation had finally been unveiled, an abstract sculpture of fractured mirrors suspended from the ceiling. Each shard reflected distorted pieces of the room. She stepped beneath it and looked up. Her own image stared back at her in dozens of broken angles. A text from Nathan arrived. "Working late again." She read it once, then again. The words felt heavier now. Across the room, her assistant approached hesitantly. "Charlotte, the security team is locking up." "I'll be right there," she replied. As she walked toward the exit, she paused once more beneath the fractured mirrors. Somewhere inside her, something quiet was beginning to sharpen. Not suspicion alone. Instinct. At home that night, Nathan reached for her in bed. Habitual, automatic. Charlotte did not pull away, but she did not move closer either. Between them lay an invisible space, small but widening. Nathan stared into the darkness, listening to her steady breathing. He told himself he was still in control. He did not yet understand that control had already begun to slip. Charlotte did not confront him the next morning. She poured coffee. She asked about his schedule. She listened to him describe a regulatory call with measured interest. She kissed his cheek before leaving for the museum. She performed normalcy flawlessly. But beneath the calm, something had shifted from instinct to inquiry. At her office, sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting pale rectangles across the hardwood floor. The museum was quiet before opening hours, security guards murmuring near the entrance, the faint echo of footsteps in distant galleries. Charlotte closed her office door. She opened her laptop. Nathan's name hovered in her shared calendar view. She scanned the entries without emotion: client calls, acquisition reviews, internal strategy sessions. Then she saw it again. Client review, LC. Recurring. Twice weekly. Always late afternoon. She clicked into the details. No location listed. No additional attendees. Professional. Minimal. Her jaw tightened slightly. LC, Lumina Collins. Lumina Grid. She had attended enough galas, enough charity panels, to recognize the name. A young founder. Tech darling. Recently featured in Chicago Business Monthly. Charlotte did not jump to conclusions. She opened a new tab and searched the company profile. Avery Collins. The article photograph appeared. Poised, intelligent, composed. Dark hair. Sharp eyes. The kind of woman who knew how to command a room without raising her voice. Charlotte studied the image for several seconds. Then she closed the tab. She refused to let jealousy dictate interpretation. Facts first. That evening. She stayed late at the museum under the pretense of reviewing donor lists. Instead, she called a number she hadn't dialed in years. Daniel Mercer. A voice answered, steady, unhurried. Daniel, it's Charlotte Whitmore. A brief pause. Recognition. Charlotte. It's been a while. Daniel had once handled a delicate theft case for the museum board, quietly, efficiently. Discretion was his currency. I need a favor, she said. His tone shifted, subtle but attentive. Go on. I need information, she continued carefully. Not illegal. Just clarity. There was no need to elaborate further. He understood the spaces between words. I'll need a name, he said. Avery Collins. And my husband. Silence followed. Not judgmental, simply aware. I'll be discreet, Daniel replied. I know. She ended the call and sat very still. This was the point of no return. Nathan felt it too, though he could not name it. That night, when he returned home, Charlotte greeted him with the same composed warmth. Dinner was prepared. Candles lit. Not romantically, just habitually. How's the acquisition? She asked. Moving forward. And Avery Collins? She added, almost idly. The question struck with precision. He masked the flicker quickly. Ambitious. Demanding. Charlotte nodded, slicing her salmon neatly. I read about her company. Impressive. Yes, he agreed, watching her carefully. It is. She did not look up. There were no accusations. No tremors in her voice. But Nathan felt something unsettling, like standing on ice that hadn't cracked yet, but might. Underscore. Three days later, Daniel emailed her. Subject. Preliminary findings. She opened it in her locked office, blinds partially drawn. Photographs. Time-stamped. Nathan and Avery exiting a restaurant in the West Loop. Sitting inside a rooftop dome. Entering Lumina's building after hours. One image lingered longer than the others. Avery's hand at Nathan's collar. Not explicit, but intimate enough. Charlotte closed the laptop slowly. Her breathing remained steady. There were no tears. Instead, a hollow sensation settled beneath her ribs. Not shock, not disbelief. Confirmation. She had suspected. Now she knew. That night, Nathan noticed something subtle. Charlotte was quieter, but not withdrawn. Measured. She watched him in moments he didn't expect. when he checked his phone, when he stepped onto the balcony to take a call, when he changed his tie. He felt exposed without understanding why. In bed, she turned toward him instead of away. "Nathan," she said softly. "Yes. Are you happy?" The question caught him off guard. "Of course. With me?" He swallowed. "Yes." She held his gaze for several seconds in the dim light. "Good," she replied gently. "I just wanted to hear you say it." She kissed him, slow, familiar, steady. Nathan closed his eyes. Guilt flickered, sharper now, because the lie was no longer abstract. It had a face, and Charlotte, in her quiet strength, was no longer merely suspicious. She was preparing. Alone in the living room after Nathan fell asleep, Charlotte reopened the email one final time. She studied the timestamps. She cross-referenced them with the gala invitation resting on the marble console table. Lumina Grid, primary sponsor. Nathan had mentioned she would be in New York that weekend. She looked at the date again, then at the photographs. A decision formed, not impulsive, not emotional. Strategic. If there was to be a fracture, she would choose the moment it became visible. Not in private, not in tears, but under chandelier light. Charlotte closed her laptop. Across the city, snowmelt dripped from rooftops, gathering along sidewalks in thin reflective pools. She stood by the penthouse window, Chicago glittering below. He thought he was hiding something. What he didn't know was that silence had already collected everything. The gala invitation arrived embossed in silver foil. Charlotte held it between her fingers at the kitchen island, examining the weight of the paper as if it were an artifact. The annual Innovation and Arts Benefit. Black tie. Hosted at the Palmer House Ballroom. Sponsored in part by Lumina Grid. She traced the company name without expression. Across the room, Nathan adjusted his cufflinks in the hallway mirror. "You'll be in New York by then, right?" he asked casually. "For the Harper installation?" "Yes," she replied, folding the invitation neatly. Friday morning. The lie felt unfamiliar in her mouth, but steady. "Good," he said. "It'll be a long night. You'd hate it." Charlotte allowed herself a faint smile. "I usually don't hate galas." He didn't notice the precision in her tone. Nathan stepped closer, brushing a kiss against her temple. "I'll make it up to you when you're back." Make it up. The phrase hung between them like an unpaid debt. The following week moved with deceptive normalcy. Charlotte confirmed her flight to New York in the shared calendar. She even packed a suitcase, 2 dresses, a leather portfolio, toiletries arranged with meticulous care. Nathan watched her zip it closed the night before departure. "What time's your car?" he asked. 6 a.m. "I'll still be asleep." "That's fine." They stood in the bedroom facing each other, separated by the open suitcase. He hesitated, then reached for her hands. "You've been distant lately," he said. The irony might have amused her, if anything felt amusing. "Have I?" she replied softly. "I just don't want us drifting." Drifting. The word almost felt tender. Charlotte looked at him, really looked at him, at the faint crease between his brows, at the uncertainty he was beginning to feel but couldn't define. "We're not drifting," she said. "We're just adjusting. To betrayal. To truth. To inevitability." He seemed reassured. That frightened her more than anger would have. At 6 in the morning, Charlotte's driver pulled away from the penthouse. Nathan watched from the bedroom window as the black sedan merged into traffic. He exhaled. Relief came first, then anticipation. He texted Avery once he returned to bed. "She's gone." The reply was immediate. "I'll see you Friday." Charlotte did not go to O'Hare. Instead, 20 minutes after leaving home, her driver circled back through River North and stopped at a boutique hotel 2 blocks from the gala venue. She checked in under her maiden name. The room was understated, cream walls, dark wood furniture, a narrow balcony overlooking Monroe Street. She set her suitcase on the luggage rack and stood still for a long moment. This was not revenge. She repeated that to herself. This was clarity. She opened her laptop and reviewed Daniel's updated report. More photographs. A timeline. Patterns consistent, predictable. Nathan had not been reckless, but he had been consistent. That, in some ways, was worse. Friday evening arrived with winter air sharp enough to sting. The Palmer House ballroom glowed beneath chandeliers, gold reflecting off polished marble. Guests arrived in tailored tuxedos and silk gowns, laughter floating through the foyer like rehearsed music. Nathan stood near the entrance, composed in black tie, scanning the room. Avery joined him moments later in a deep sapphire gown, elegant, controlled. Not overtly intimate, not obviously distant. They looked appropriate, professional. But when she adjusted his bow tie, her fingers lingered half a second too long. "You seem tense," she murmured. "Big room," he replied. She smiled slightly. "Relax. No one suspects anything." That word again. Anything. Across town, Charlotte stood in front of the hotel mirror. Her gown was ivory silk, understated but commanding. She fastened diamond studs at her ears, wedding gift from Nathan's mother 15 years earlier. She studied her reflection not for beauty, but for composure. There would be no tears tonight, no raised voices, only presence. She picked up the gala invitation from the desk and slipped it into her clutch. Then she stepped into the hallway. Inside the ballroom. Music swelled as donors and executives circulated beneath crystal light. Conversations layered over one another, venture capital, museum expansions, urban sustainability. Nathan accepted a glass of champagne he did not want. He felt oddly exposed, though nothing was visibly wrong. Avery leaned closer to him as a photographer passed. The flash illuminated their faces in bright white. Somewhere in the crowd, a familiar perfume drifted faintly. Not Avery's. Cedar and white jasmine. Nathan turned instinctively. The ballroom doors had just opened, and Charlotte Whitmore stepped inside, smiling calmly. She moved with effortless grace, greeting acquaintances as though she had always intended to attend. Her posture straight, her expression serene. No drama, no shock, just quiet inevitability. Across the room, Nathan felt the ground tilt beneath him. Beside him, Avery followed his line of sight. "Who is that?" she asked softly. Nathan did not answer, because he knew. And in that suspended second, under chandeliers, beneath the weight of 100 observing eyes, he realized the night was no longer under his control. The music did not stop when Charlotte entered. That was the strange part. No record scratched. No dramatic hush. The string quartet continued its polished arrangement near the stage. Glasses clinked softly, and laughter drifted across round tables dressed in white linen. But in Nathan's body, something stalled. Charlotte moved through the ballroom as though she belonged to it, because she did. Donors greeted her warmly. A museum trustee kissed her cheek. Someone complimented her gown. "You're back from New York already?" a board member asked. Charlotte smiled gently. Plans changed. Her voice carried easily, unhurried. Across the room, Nathan forced himself to breathe normally. "She said she was in New York," Avery murmured. "She was," he replied automatically. But even as the words left his mouth, he knew they sounded thin. Charlotte's gaze found him eventually. Not urgently, not accusingly. Simply aware. Their eyes locked across the space. 15 years of shared mornings, shared losses, shared ambitions, all condensed into that single look. She inclined her head slightly, as though acknowledging a distant acquaintance. Nathan felt heat crawl up his spine. Avery shifted beside him. "Should I know something?" she asked, her voice lower now. "That's my wife," he said. The word felt heavier than it ever had before. Avery straightened subtly. Her expression adjusted, professional, guarded. "Of course," she replied. "Then let's greet her." Nathan hesitated. The idea of the three of them occupying the same circle of light felt impossible. But Charlotte had already begun walking toward them. Each step was measured, deliberate. The silk of her gown moved like water around her legs. She stopped at an appropriate distance. "Nathan," she said warmly. "Charlotte." His voice nearly betrayed him, but he steadied it. She turned to Avery with poised curiosity. "You must be Avery Collins. Congratulations on the sponsorship tonight. Lumina Grid's expansion has been impressive." Avery blinked once, recalibrating. "Thank you. And you're Charlotte. I've heard wonderful things about the museum." The handshake between the two women was brief but precise. No claws, no tremor, just awareness. "I didn't expect you back until next week," Nathan said carefully. Charlotte's gaze rested on him, not accusing, not soft. "I decided not to miss such an important evening," she replied. "After all, we're all here for innovation and transparency." The word landed quietly. Transparency. Avery's eyes flickered almost imperceptibly. Nathan forced a thin smile. "Of course." A passing photographer paused. "Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, may I?" Charlotte stepped closer to Nathan without hesitation. Her arm slid through his. The contact felt electric. Avery stepped aside gracefully, positioning herself just outside the frame. The camera flashed. For the first time that evening, Nathan understood the depth of Charlotte's strategy. She would not create a scene. She would not grant him the excuse of public humiliation. She would stand beside him, composed, radiant, and let the tension suffocate him privately. Underscore. At their assigned table, Charlotte conversed effortlessly with donors. She discussed upcoming exhibitions, civic funding, the role of technology in modern art. Nathan responded when spoken to, but his attention fractured constantly between Charlotte's steady composure and Avery's controlled silence across the table. At one point, Charlotte turned to Avery. "I imagine balancing rapid growth with ethical responsibility must be exhausting," she said pleasantly. "It can be," Avery admitted. Charlotte nodded thoughtfully. "Integrity always demands more effort than ambition." The statement was general enough to avoid direct offense, but specific enough to cut. Nathan felt it. Avery did too. For the first time since their affair began, Avery's confidence wavered. She studied Charlotte, not as a rival, but as a variable she had underestimated. This was not a naive wife. This was a woman who understood timing. Underscore. Later in the evening, as guests moved toward the dance floor, Nathan found himself momentarily alone with Charlotte near the bar. He kept his voice low. "What are you doing?" She did not look at him immediately. "I'm attending a gala," she said calmly. "You said you were in New York. And you said you were working late." The air between them shifted. His throat tightened. "Not here." "No," she agreed softly. "Not here." That frightened him more than anger would have. She turned to face him fully now. Her expression held neither tears nor fury, only clarity. "Enjoy your evening, Nathan," she said. "We'll talk at home." Then she walked away, leaving him standing alone beneath the chandeliers. Across the ballroom, Avery watched the exchange. She approached him slowly. "Does she know?" she asked. Nathan exhaled through clenched teeth. "I don't know." But he did. Charlotte would not have come otherwise. The music swelled louder as couples began to dance. From the stage, a speaker announced Lumina Grid's philanthropic commitment to urban sustainability. Applause filled the room. Nathan clapped automatically, though his palms felt numb. He had believed he was managing risk, compartmentalizing desire, controlling the narrative. Now, under crystal light and public admiration, He understood something fundamental had shifted. The secret was no longer his alone, and the reckoning would not happen in this ballroom. It would happen in the silence waiting at home. The drive home was nearly silent. Chicago after midnight felt stripped down, traffic thinned, storefront lights dimmed, the river reflecting fractured gold from distant towers. Nathan kept both hands on the steering wheel, eyes fixed ahead. Charlotte sat beside him, composed, her clutch resting neatly on her lap. Neither of them mentioned Avery. Neither of them mentioned the gala. The silence was not empty. It was structured. When they reached the penthouse, Charlotte stepped out first. The elevator ride to the 32nd floor passed in muted reflection, their mirrored images standing inches apart, not touching. Inside, she slipped off her heels and placed them side by side near the door. Nathan removed his bow tie, dropping it onto the console. "We should talk," he began. "Yes," she agreed calmly. "We should." She crossed the living room slowly, turning on only one lamp. The soft light cast long shadows across the marble floor. The city skyline beyond the glass shimmered, indifferent as ever. Charlotte did not sit. She stood near the window, hands lightly clasped. "Before you say anything," she said, her voice even, "I'd like you to consider something carefully." Nathan felt his pulse in his throat. She turned toward him. "How long?" The question was precise. Not if, not why. How long? He opened his mouth, then hesitated. "It's not," he began. Her gaze sharpened slightly. "Don't insult me." The words were not loud. They were devastatingly controlled. He exhaled. "A few months." Her expression did not change. "Physical?" she asked. The word hovered between them like glass. "Yes." The admission felt like stepping off a ledge. Charlotte absorbed it without visible reaction. "Do you love her?" she continued. "No." The answer came too quickly. She studied him for several seconds. "You hesitated less on that than you did on the first question," she observed. He swallowed. "Because that part is simple." "Is it?" Silence expanded in the room. Nathan moved closer, instinctively. "It didn't mean anything," he said. "It was a choice," Charlotte finished for him. The word landed firmly. He ran a hand through his hair. "It was a mistake." "Mistakes happen once," she replied. This required planning. The clarity of her language left no room for refuge. Nathan felt the full weight of it now, not just the affair, but the underestimation. He had believed he could navigate this quietly, that Charlotte's trust would shield him. "You were distant," he said weakly. "We were drifting." Charlotte's lips curved faintly, not in amusement, but disbelief. "We were living," she corrected. "You chose to interpret stability as absence." He had no response. She walked to the dining table and opened her clutch. From inside, she removed a thin folder. Nathan recognized the paper before she laid it out. Photographs. Time-stamped. Restaurant exteriors. Rooftop domes. Lumina's building entrance after hours. His breath faltered. "I didn't want to assume," Charlotte said quietly. "I prefer evidence." "You hired someone," he said, stunned. "Yes." The simplicity of her answer unsettled him more than anger would have. "How long have you known?" he asked. "Long enough." The city lights flickered behind her like distant signals. "I could have confronted you weeks ago," she continued. "I could have humiliated you tonight. In front of donors. In front of Avery." He closed his eyes briefly. "But I didn't," she said. "Do you know why?" He shook his head. "Because dignity is not something I trade for spectacle." The room felt smaller now. Nathan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Charlotte, I'll end it." "You already should have," she replied. "I will." Her gaze held steady. "And then what?" The question stunned him. "What do you mean?" "You end it. You apologize. We attend therapy. We repair. That's the script, isn't it?" Her tone was not sarcastic. It was analytical. He felt exposed. "Is that what you want?" he asked carefully. Charlotte's composure wavered for the first time, not visibly, but internally. A flicker of pain moved through her eyes. "I want to understand when I became invisible," she said softly. The vulnerability in that sentence struck deeper than accusation. "You weren't invisible," he insisted. "But I was," she replied. "You sought being seen elsewhere." Silence filled the space again. Nathan realized something then. This was not just about sex, or ego, or novelty. It was about displacement. You built a parallel life, Charlotte continued. Lunches, drinks, shared doubts, shared complaints. He had no defense. Did you tell her about our first apartment in Lincoln Park? She asked quietly. About how we used to eat takeout on the floor because we hadn't bought furniture yet? He shook his head. Did you tell her about my miscarriage? The word cut the air open. No. Good, Charlotte whispered. Some parts of us remain intact. Her voice trembled slightly on that last sentence. Nathan stepped forward and reached for her hands. This time, she did not pull away, but she did not squeeze back either. I'm sorry, he said. And for the first time, it was not strategic. It was hollowed. She looked at him, not as a husband, not as a partner, but as a man who had fractured something sacred. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, she said. The honesty of it chilled him. I need time, she continued. And space. Not performative remorse. Not promises. He nodded slowly. Sleep in the guest room tonight, she added. The instruction was calm. Final for now. Nathan hesitated, then picked up his discarded bow tie and walked down the hallway. Charlotte remained by the window. Below, Chicago glowed with quiet indifference. The applause from the gala had faded. What remained was the echo of a marriage suspended between survival and collapse. Nathan did not sleep. The guest room felt unfamiliar despite being in his own home. The bed was narrower, the ceiling lower, the silence sharper. Through the wall, he could faintly hear the city, distant traffic, a late siren, wind brushing against the glass facade. He stared at his phone on the nightstand. 3 unread messages. Avery, are you home? Avery. She looked at me like she knew. Avery, Nathan? He turned the phone face down. For the first time since the affair began, the thrill was gone. In its place was exposure. Underscore. Charlotte lay awake in the master bedroom, staring at the ceiling she had once chosen for its subtle plaster detail. 15 years of shared decisions lived in this apartment. Paint colors debated, furniture assembled, framed photographs aligned with care. She felt neither rage nor collapse, only a quiet recalibration. The question was no longer whether Nathan had betrayed her. He had. The question was whether the marriage that existed before the betrayal was strong enough to survive its truth. She rose before dawn. In the kitchen, she brewed coffee and stood by the window, watching pale morning light creep across the lake. At 7, Nathan emerged from the hallway, already dressed for work. They regarded each other cautiously. I'll call her today, he said. Charlotte took a slow sip of coffee. Not for me. He hesitated. What does that mean? If you end it, do it because you understand what you've done, not because you're afraid of being caught. The distinction unsettled him. I do understand, he insisted. She met his eyes. Do you? He had no adequate answer. Nathan texted Avery mid-morning. We need to talk. Her reply came seconds later. I assumed we would. They met at her office again, neutral ground that no longer felt neutral. The space seemed brighter than before, almost interrogative under midday light. Staff moved behind glass walls, unaware of the fracture unfolding in the corner office. Avery closed the door behind them. She knows, she said immediately. Yes. How much? Enough. She absorbed that in silence. And? She asked. And this has to end. The words felt heavy but rehearsed. Avery studied him. Not wounded, not hysterical, just evaluating. Is that what you want? She asked quietly. Yes. A flicker of disappointment crossed her face, quickly contained. Or is that what you need to say right now? He exhaled. Charlotte deserves better. And what about you? She pressed. He faltered, because part of him still felt the pull, the ease of being admired, the electricity of secrecy, the illusion of reinvention. But those feelings now carried consequence. This was a mistake, he said finally. Avery's jaw tightened slightly. Don't reduce it to that. I'm not, he replied. But it can't continue. She walked to the window, looking down at the busy street below. You told me you felt invisible, she said. You told me you were tired of being predictable. I was. And now I'm tired of lying. The honesty surprised even him. Avery turned back slowly. You think ending this fixes everything? She asked. No. Your firm represents my company, Nathan. You sit on advisory panels. If this becomes public, it won't. The certainty in his voice lacked foundation. She held his gaze for a long moment. I didn't start this to ruin your life, she said. I know, but I won't be erased either. The warning was subtle, not a threat, a statement of reality. Nathan felt the precariousness of it all, the legal entanglements, the social overlap, the fragile ecosystem of reputation in Chicago's elite circles. I'll request reassignment of your account, he said. Professionally, it's cleaner. Avery nodded slowly. Good, she replied. At least that part is strategic. There was no dramatic goodbye, no final embrace, only a lingering look, shared history compressed into silence. When Nathan left the building, the winter air felt colder than before. Underscore at the museum that afternoon, Charlotte stood before a new acquisition, a large canvas washed in muted blues, interrupted by a violent slash of crimson down the center. A young intern approached cautiously. What do you think it means? The intern asked. Charlotte studied the painting. Interruption, she said. Something unexpected that changes the composition. Is it ruined? The intern asked. Charlotte considered that. No, she replied softly. But it will never be what it was before. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Nathan, I ended it. She stared at the message for several seconds, then typed back. I need time. The response felt honest. Because ending the affair did not erase it. Trust was not a switch. It was architecture, and theirs had cracked. Underscore. That evening, Nathan returned home earlier than usual. Charlotte was seated at the dining table, reviewing exhibition plans. I spoke with her, he said. She nodded once. I'll be requesting reassignment from the account. That's wise, she replied. He stood there, unsure where to place himself in the room. I don't want to lose you, he said quietly. Charlotte closed her folder and looked up. You already did, she answered, not cruelly, but truthfully. The words landed with finality. What we have now, she continued, is something different. Whether it becomes something whole again depends on what you're willing to confront. Not just about her, about yourself. Nathan felt the weight of that. Because this was no longer about secrecy. It was about character. Outside, the city moved as it always did, traffic flowing, lights blinking, lives intersecting without pause. Inside the penthouse, two people stood at the edge of something uncertain. The affair had ended, but the reckoning had only begun. The penthouse felt larger after the confession. Not physically. Structurally, it remained the same. Glass walls, polished marble, carefully selected art. But space had rearranged itself between them. Nathan moved cautiously through rooms as though afraid of triggering an alarm. He offered to cook, to schedule therapy, to cancel business travel. Charlotte accepted none of it immediately. She did not reject it either. On Sunday morning, she walked alone along the lakefront. The wind off Lake Michigan was sharp, scattering gulls across the pale sky. Joggers passed in steady rhythm. Couples walked dogs. The city breathed normally. Her phone remained silent in her coat pocket. She thought about the early years, graduate school, their first cramped condo, Nathan studying case law at the kitchen counter while she sketched exhibition layouts. They had once been a partnership built on hunger and hope. At what point had comfort replaced curiosity? At what point had she stopped asking him who he was becoming? But then another question surfaced. At what point had he stopped telling her? Underscore. That afternoon, Nathan sat at the dining table with documents spread before him, forms requesting reassignment from Lumina Grid's account. His firm would ask questions. The managing partner would raise an eyebrow at the timing. He signed anyway. When Charlotte returned home, he slid the papers across the table. "It's official," he said. She glanced at the signature but did not linger on it. "Thank you," she replied. He studied her face carefully. "Is there anything else you need from me?" The phrasing was cautious, almost legal. She sat down across from him. "Yes," she said. He waited. "I need you to stop framing this as damage control." His brow tightened. "I'm not." "You are," she said gently. "You're rearranging logistics. Canceling accounts. Signing forms." She held his gaze. "But I need to know why you allowed yourself to seek validation elsewhere instead of speaking to me." The question settled heavily between them. Nathan leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "Because it was easier," he admitted. The honesty surprised them both. "With her, I wasn't the husband with history," he continued. "I wasn't the partner expected to be steady. I was admired." Charlotte absorbed that without flinching. "And you think I don't admire you?" she asked. He hesitated. "I think," he said carefully, "that over time admiration became assumption. We assumed we were solid, so we stopped proving it." The words felt incomplete, but closer to truth than anything he had said before. Charlotte folded her hands on the table. "Do you love me?" she asked. "Yes." "Why?" The simplicity of the question startled him. He searched for language beyond habit. "Because you challenge me," he said. "Because you built your life without leaning on mine. Because when things fall apart, you don't panic." A flicker passed through her eyes. "Then why risk losing that?" He swallowed. "Because I confused being desired with being valued." Silence followed. Outside, wind pressed faintly against the glass. Underserved. Days passed in a suspended rhythm. They slept in separate rooms. They spoke politely. They attended one therapy session, an office in Gold Coast with neutral walls and carefully arranged bookshelves. Nathan spoke more than Charlotte did. Charlotte listened. On Wednesday evening, she met her friend Lillian for dinner in Lincoln Park. "You're calm," Lillian observed over a glass of red wine. "I don't feel calm," Charlotte replied. "You're not furious?" "I was," she said. "Now I'm deciding." "Deciding what?" "Whether forgiveness is strength or self-erasure." Lillian leaned back, considering. "Can you trust him again?" she asked. Charlotte stared at the candle flame between them. "Trust," she said slowly, "isn't rebuilt by apologies. It's rebuilt by consistency over time." "And do you want to wait for that?" That was the real question. That night, Charlotte stood alone in the living room. Nathan approached cautiously. "I've been looking at apartments," she said without turning around. His breath caught. "For us." "For me." The word landed cleanly. Not dramatic. Not weaponized. Simply factual. "I'm not saying I'm leaving," she continued. "But I need to know I can." The distinction shook him. "You don't need my permission," he said quietly. "I know." She turned to face him. "For 15 years, I defined myself partly as your wife. I need to remember who I am outside that." He felt a wave of fear, real and unfiltered. "Is there someone else?" he asked, the insecurity slipping through. "No," she replied steadily. "This isn't about replacing you. It's about reclaiming myself." The truth of that silenced him. She stepped closer. "I haven't decided yet," she said. "Staying would mean choosing you again, not defaulting to you." He nodded slowly. "And leaving," she added, "would mean grieving the version of us that existed before the lie." The room held both possibilities. Nathan understood then that the affair's end was not the climax. This was because Charlotte's choice would not be driven by anger or humiliation. It would be driven by self-respect. He reached for her hand carefully. This time, she let him hold it. Not tightly, not fully, but not withdrawn either. Between staying and leaving, there was space. And in that space, their future waited, uncertain, fragile, and entirely dependent on what they would become next. Winter began loosening its grip on Chicago. Snow receded from sidewalks in uneven patches. The river shifted from steel gray to something closer to blue. Light lingered longer in the evenings, stretching shadows across the penthouse floors. Charlotte stood alone in the museum's main gallery before opening hours. The fractured mirror installation still hung from the ceiling, each shard catching the early sun and scattering it across the room. She had kept it longer than originally planned. People often assumed fractured things were meant to be removed quickly, replaced with something seamless. But she had begun to appreciate its honesty. Her phone vibrated softly. A message from the realtor she had contacted weeks earlier. The unit in Streeterville is still available. Let me know if you'd like to tour again. Charlotte read it twice. She did not reply immediately. Underscore Nathan had changed in small, deliberate ways. He came home on time. He left his phone face up on the counter. He spoke more carefully, not rehearsed, but aware. At therapy, he did not defend himself anymore. He listened when Charlotte described the moment she saw the photographs. He did not interrupt when she explained how invisibility felt worse than betrayal. But effort did not erase memory. Some nights, Charlotte would wake and glance at him sleeping beside her. Yes, they had returned to the same bed, and feel a flicker of doubt. Trust, once cracked, carried a hairline fracture. Not always visible, always present. Underscore one evening, as early spring rain tapped against the windows, they sat at the dining table without devices between them. I've been offered a curatorial fellowship in Boston, Charlotte said. Nathan looked up, startled. Boston? It's temporary. 6 months. He absorbed that quietly. Do you want to go? He asked. Yes. The honesty was clean. Alone? Yes. Silence settled between them. 6 months was not forever. But it was distance. I won't stop you, Nathan said finally. She studied him carefully. That's not why I told you. Why did you? Because I need to know if we can survive space without secrecy. The words held layered meaning. He nodded slowly. I can relocate for part of it, he offered. Remote work is possible. She shook her head gently. This isn't about logistics. It was about identity. About who she was when not positioned beside him at galas, not introduced as Mrs. Whitmore. Nathan leaned back in his chair. Are you leaving me? He asked quietly. Charlotte considered the question with care. No, she said. I'm choosing myself. The distinction mattered. He felt fear again, but not the frantic kind. The sober kind. I don't want to lose you, he said. You might, she replied softly. That's the consequence. He accepted that without argument. Weeks later, the night before her departure to Boston, they stood together on the balcony overlooking the city. The air was cool, but no longer biting. Traffic below moved in familiar currents. Somewhere in the distance, a train traced a silver arc through the dark. This city has watched us for 15 years, Nathan said quietly. Yes, Charlotte replied. Do you think it's enough? She understood the question beneath the words. Is what we have left enough? She rested her elbows on the railing. I don't believe in returning to what was, she said. I believe in building what's next. If we stay married, it won't be because it's comfortable. It will be because we both choose it every day. He nodded. And if we don't, he asked, then we'll know we didn't stay out of fear. The clarity of her answer steadied something inside him. For the first time since the gala, he felt the weight of consequence not as punishment, but as responsibility. He stepped closer, not to claim her, but to stand beside her. I'll do the work, he said. She turned her head slightly. Not for me, she reminded him gently. For yourself. He exhaled. For myself, he agreed. The next morning, as her car pulled away toward O'Hare, this time truly headed for departure, Nathan stood at the window and watched. There was no dramatic farewell, no shattered glass, just a quiet understanding that love, when tested, does not disappear. It transforms. In Boston, Charlotte would walk through unfamiliar streets, curate new spaces, rediscover the parts of herself that had nothing to do with betrayal. In Chicago, Nathan would confront the emptiness that had driven him toward admiration instead of honesty. Their marriage was no longer pristine. It was marked. But marks did not automatically mean ruin. They meant history. Months later, when Charlotte returned for a weekend visit, she paused beneath the fractured mirror installation in the museum. Sunlight struck the shards, scattering light in unexpected directions. Nothing aligned perfectly, yet the reflection was still whole, just reconfigured. Charlotte smiled faintly at the realization. Love was not about avoiding fractures. It was about deciding what shape you were willing to live with. And for now, the decision remained open, not fragile, not forced, just honest. The chandeliers of that gala night had once illuminated a secret. Now, memory held it differently, not as spectacle, but as a turning point. Because sometimes the quietest entrance into a ballroom changes everything. And sometimes the calmest woman in the room is the one who walks away with the most power.